Welcome to the program. My name is Vince Nigro. On Insights today, William Fox. His new book, Watch, Listen, and Speak. We talk about his insights about this particular book, what drove him to write this book. It's a self-help book, great book to have, great interview. Stay with us. William Fox on Insights. William Fox, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Watch, Listen, Speak, your most recent book. Just finished reading it. You published a couple other books in the past, self-help books. Not as the word intense. I'm not going to say the word intense. They're all different. They all have a different perspective on things. They're all about self-help, that the whole area you come up against. But this one in particular, I urge people to get a copy and read it. It's one of those books, as I was telling you off air, that, and we'll get into the details of it, is that it's one of those books you want to keep around because after you read it the one time, I found myself, I brought it in my car and I had it in my car. Every time I had a few minutes, I would kind of look at the book because there's a lot of great quotes, and we're going to go over some of the stuff that you referenced to in terms of self-help, in terms of working your own mindset and how to deal with people. This particular book, William, give us a sense of how this book came about.
Well, it wasn't written with an intent from a classroom perspective. This is based on real life experience that I had as a general contractor, and the experiences I had with clients and in the different subcontractors, even relationships, personal relationships, family members. And you really find that you need to understand people more than you realize. And communication, people think of it as a soft skill, but I think it's the main skill. And anything you do, you'll need to communicate with people. So the better you understand how you bring yourself to the communication table or to the conversation, and how you listen is the most important.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned like these are a lot of your experiences as being a general contractor, and it doesn't matter whether you're a general contractor, a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer. It doesn't matter who you are. Life is such that you come up against a lot of challenges, family, work, personal, and stress is everywhere. And how you cope with it and how you deal with people is something that I got out of the book because, even though, over the years, you make mistakes and you learn from your mistakes. And sometimes you reflect back on them. And reflection is a key word they use quite a bit, where you reflect on things, is that you say to yourself, should I have done it that way? Should I have stepped back and taken a few minutes before I went into this meeting? A lot of the things that you talk about are all about how you handle a situation. For example, you always said, and this is what I've deal with, is that you have to read the room. When you walk into a room, it's a bit of an art to read the room because sometimes you can't read the room. But talk to us a little bit about how you have gone on a particular path about reading the room and how to deal with that room.
Well, a lot of times you walk into a room, you have to sense the tension in people.
Right.
A lot of communication is not always spoken. Before anything leaves your mouth, people have already communicated with you, whether their shoulders are tense, they're leaning in or leaning back. You can kind of read how they feel. Sometimes you can see the nerves in their posture. So you have to really read the room before you do anything. That's the main part of this book, which is watch. And you have to really watch everyone's reaction when you come in, how they're sitting, how they're paying attention. Are they looking at you in the eyes? Are they really tensed up, or are they leaning forward? You can see they're really into your conversation. You can kind of read them before they even speak, and that's the first part of it, which is watch.
Of course, observe. and listen and speak. There's an old adage that silence is golden, and sometimes less is better than more. You also reference a lot to doing a lot of listening in these meetings, and sometimes the silence, the answer is just as good as actually responding to something. Talk a little bit about that particular area of your experiences, whether it's through your general contracting area, but that's a big part of the book as well in terms of the silence.
Yeah, listening is probably the most important in any type of conversation if you want to maintain a good relationship. You have to really listen to to an extent that you're not thinking of what you're saying next. In, you're really into what they're saying, so you really want to understand their perspective. So you really have to listen, and you have to listen with every part of your body. I speak of something called the third ear, which is you're really compassionate listening. So you're really interested in what the person has to say.
So it's almost like the third eye. So the third eye, the third ear. So it's really actually doing a lot more listening to that person that you're dealing with.
Yeah, the more you listen, instead of trying to always jump in to the conversation and trying to add your opinion, people, when they feel that you're really listening, they tend to trust you more. So it's better that you give it time, and sometimes even even after you think that they're done, give it a second or two because they may not be done. So give them more time to
Right.
speak.
Let me throw an example at you. Maybe give us a little bit how to deal with this. So I walk into a room and I try to read it and I misread it, and I get into a confrontation with someone in the room, and that person starts yelling and starts saying things, maybe true, maybe not. I'm caught in the moment, and what do you do? Do you respond? Do you fight back? Do you take a few seconds? You pause and reflect. How would you handle that situation?
Most people probably react in a conversation like that, which is probably the worst thing you can do. You should pause, try to ground yourself. That's what I do. Uh, if you're standing or if you're sitting, plant your feet. Give yourself a couple seconds. Even if you have to give yourself a couple deep breaths, there's different breath breathing techniques in the book as well. Whichever is best for you, because everyone is different. So but the main thing is you have to ground yourself, pause, and try to keep your emotions calm. So that way you don't actually react. You more respond to the person.
Well, that's easier said than done. But so you're saying that you basically got to work your mindset to be trained that way because it's so easy overreacting. Like I was telling you, you could be in a car and someone kind of jumps in front of you and you can start yelling and screaming or whatever. And that's the natural reaction to have. And then 5 minutes later, you say to yourself, why did I do that? Yeah, aside from somebody trying to cut you off. So it really is a matter, you're saying, to train yourself. And you have to be cognizant. And we'll talk about journalism, writing things down, journaling. Um, do you agree that you have to train your mind and have it in your mindset that those examples?
Your mind is the probably your strongest tool out there. Just like how you train your body physically,
Yep.
you have to train your
Of
mind.
course.
Every day you have to train it. It's best to always reflect on your in the morning or at night or in the day, or all three is even good if you can. And the more you reflect on your inner thoughts, you're already conditioning your mind in a situation like that. Because when stuff does get a little chaotic, out of control in a conversation, a lot of people tend to react differently. But the best thing you can do is be prepared. When it does get really out of hand, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your preparation. So if you're prepared for it based on how you reflect on your own, or even just before you enter a conversation, if you know it might be a little heated, you kind of step back before you enter the
Right.
conversation and you catch yourself before it happens.
This book obviously is a book with a lot of personal experiences and key phrases to train your mind to become a better person. Obviously, uh, this book it's been a while because there's a lot of your early years in terms of a lot of your career changes and what happened. While that was going on, were you cognizant of these things? Like, were you taking notes at the time? When did uh, you become aware that I got to put this stuff on writing because it's helped me and I might be able to help someone else through these particular experiences and thoughts? Were you writing these things down? Were you journaling back then?
A lot of it wasn't, especially in my early years. Uh, I would say more of the writing came in when I started taking a lot of notes for the jobs I did, which which helped me catch up to my reflecting. So when I would write down what I had left to do in a job, or what we got done and what needs to be completed for the next week
Right.
or so, it was an easy way for me uh, to catch up to what we needed for the next
Right.
job, or in my sense. But I only started writing this particular detail came a couple years ago. So I started taking more notes on how I present myself, the presence I offer to the conversation, and then I started looking back into my previous experiences,
Right.
and I see how some conversations went well and why it did, and then one or others that didn't go so well. What could I have done differently?
And the essence of the book is communication. It doesn't matter where you are, it's how you communicate, good, bad, indifferent, family, workplace, whatever. It's really communicating and getting the most out of a situation, uh, and trying to be successful at it, but also having your self-awareness. uh, the word I'm trying to find is not to affect yourself through stress. It's a matter of how you can deal with the situation in a smart way.
Presence is key.
Yeah.
When you are present in the moment with the person in the conversation, they tend to let their guard down. They tend to trust you more. So it makes the conversation and communication easier.
Yeah, you reflect a lot on your presence. Um, the other phrase that caught my attention in the book is the expression owning your voice, owning your impact. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, that's the last part of the book. Watch, listen, speak. Speak should be after you've watched the room, after you've already listened intently. So when you speak, your voice has to really make the difference, and you speak with clarity. You don't add any fluff to it. The more specific you are, the more clear you are, the easier your message comes around. The easier they understand you. And a lot of times the best thing to do is, the less you say, the clearer you say it, the better your message comes
Right.
across.
So, as I said at the top of the show, that you've done other books on self-help, and this is also, at the end of the day, it is a self-help book, whether it's your communication, watch, listen, speak, it is a self-help book. Um, when you reflect on yourself in terms of where you are in your life, and you've gone through all these things, where do you think you are in the pecking order? On a scale of 1 to 10, do you think you're like 7, 8 in terms of how to deal with stuff? Forget about the financial stuff in terms of you as a person through this life. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you right now after writing this book?
I would say I'm not perfect, and every day you're learning, and every conversation you speak with anyone, whether it's a stranger, your family member, coworker, or employees, you should always keep something like this in mind. And it's always a practice in the making, right? You should always train yourself. So every conversation is that practice.
Right. Obviously, the goal of an author is to obviously sell as many books and get your messaging out. But as I said, like this book is a book that it's a keeper. You want to keep it, and you want to be able to go back and reference a lot of things because it really does. It's exercise. It's really exercising and getting involved. Your long-term intent with this book, was it to be something that, aside from making some money on the book, was it to be more of an educational book? Is it something that you want more in the self-help? Where do you see this book kind of where would you like to see it go?
I think it's kind of in between the self-help and the educational, but a lot of it is a bit of storytelling because I get into a little bit of my personal experiences. So it gets a little,
Which is real, which is real.
that's kind of what I
Yeah,
wanted. And the previous books I've had, I didn't put too much of my personal touch into it as much as I should have.
right.
And that's why I think I put more depth into this one and I put more of me in it. And, and a lot of it needs to be true to yourself. And I can't be unless I tell the story as I did in this book. And I used my experiences to try to help people have a better understanding of how to communicate. And that's why I think it's a good educational book, a good tool to
Right.
use. And if you if you can reference it on a regular, it kind of keeps you refreshed on the idea, so you kind of don't lose the touch when you actually are communicating,
Right.
because you should be always
Right.
thinking of this every
Right.
communication.
Just on a personal note, we've known each other for a while now, and when I reflect back on the first couple times I met you, the one thing that really does stick out for me that you had a calming presence, that you had an aura about you that was kind of relaxing. You didn't over dramatize. You didn't over push something. I found the calmness, and now that I reflect on it in terms of the past couple of years, the first time I met you, there was, whether you were aware of it or not, there was this kind of an easier going uh, uh, presence about you that was able to communicate easier with you, because when you find someone they got their back up against the wall, it's hard to communicate. It's like, as you said, read the person. But again, just on a personal note, I want to let you know that when I reflected back this weekend after reading the book, one of the first traits that I noticed about you was that calming effect.
I'm usually a calm person. Like everyone, there are times that I could
Of course.
possibly get a little angry. I try not to snap. In my younger ages, I did more often, and I didn't realize the effect it had on not just me, on the people around me. So I started to realize that I needed to step back, and I didn't realize I was already taking stuff from this book. It was just an instinct in myself, and the best thing I can do is really step back and reflect on how I am feeling. And the most important is, if you can control your emotions in a tense situation, then the people around you will also calm down.
Right.
So it kind of bring, even if everyone else is angry, if you keep a calm head, then your vibration basically brings their energy down.
Yeah.
So it's good to see that, especially in a leadership role, when everyone is looking for the leader or the person in charge to possibly overreact, and when they stay calm and they bring their presence to the conversation, people tend to lean in more, and they'll come to you more when there are problems, instead of trying to keep stay away from the
Right.
conflict.
One of the other things that you reference in the book is that like, we all work or go to school or whatever, and we all have different lives. And then when you're in the car, when you get home, or just before you get home, you kind of reflect in terms of kind of reflecting on what you've done, and then entering into another world. It's kind of sounds simple, but taking even that 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 minutes just before you shift gears is so crucial, so important.
Yeah, that's my way of doing it. Everyone has their own. To me, I think it's a simple way. So when I get home, I will reflect in the car, where I can quiet the noise around me, and there's no one to distract me from where I have to catch up my thoughts, because we always have to really keep our thoughts in order. And if you just let them roam free, you don't live uh in an aiming type of life,
Right,
where you need responsibility, you need something to aim for. So when you take that time to reflect, I do it, and usually when I get home, I sit, sometimes it's only 2 or 3 minutes. Sometimes it could be more depending on when it is, how stressful the day was. And a lot of times I might take a few notes to keep, uh, to keep them remembered for it, whether it's for work or if it's just for my own thoughts. Um, so my way of doing it is I do sit in the car. I mentioned in the book, uh, usually at the end of the day, so I can kind of catch up on what during the day you don't always keep everything on tabs. So when you sit like I do in my car, you can catch up to everything that may have passed
Okay.
you by.
See you later.
So you can there's certain things that may not be as important, but it's still good to realize. And when you reflect, you can catch up to everything you did.
Yeah, one of the other things that just towards the end of the interview is that there were three phases that really stuck out in my mind. I just want to read them back to you and just give us some context to it. As you said, pause before you enter a room, plant your feet, exhale slowly. Now, those three exercises, simple as they sound, a lot of people don't do that. And, I wrote that down because I wanted to discuss it with you, is because if I would have done that in some of my previous scenarios, it would probably had a different outcome. And I highlighted that in the book because I think those three key important, those key issues are so important. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, that's what I mentioned earlier with grounding.
Right.
You have to pause and you really, if you can plant your feet, you're grounding yourself. And if you're aware of it, that's when you take you really lower your heart rate. It's a good way to stay calm, to lower even your blood pressure if you're nervous or if you're anxious. So it really gets you to catch up to your thoughts, and you almost can you can almost you'll know how your conversation might go by kind of going through it in your head. So when you do come to the conversation, and it might be a heated one, if you took that time to pause, ground yourself, and exhale slowly, your heart rate will lower, so you won't come in as hot.
Right.
And you'll communicate better. And at the end of the day, it's not about communication. It's actually about connecting. So whether it's a conflict or if it's a good conversation, you want to have a good connection with the person, because it's all about relationships at the
Yeah,
end of the day.
connecting and communicating.
Yeah,
And getting, because if you don't have those two key words, connecting and communicating, sometimes it's just a waste of time.
it just falls out.
Falls off.
A lot of it, that's what this book was written for, because I started to look back and see how many different jobs I did where I could have paused instead of not pausing. Or there's a lot of jobs that it wasn't our skill that we lost the job, or it wasn't our quote. A lot of time was my tone or my presence, and maybe I didn't brush off the right way with the client. So it wasn't even about the quote. It wasn't about our professionalism. It's just the communication.
Communication, and sometimes a particular word that is said can kill a deal or kill a relationship. And sometimes it's said, less is better. And it really is trained. And that's why the book helps you train yourself and gives you tools and words to continue to improve yourself and deal with all kinds of situations. Finally, give us a little bit of a sense, after writing these self-help books, and this one in particular of Watch, Listen, Speak, um, give us a little bit of the William Fox daily routine. How was, give us a day in the life of William Fox.
I get up early on a regular. I'm usually up. I try to be in bed by 9, and I'm up by 5.
So sleeping is obviously important.
I try. Obviously, it doesn't happen. There's some days we get to bed 11, 12 o'clock, but my internal clock usually gets me up about 5 o'clock, between 4:30 and 5:30. And when I get up, I usually try to, I already reflect, and I try to reflect on, um, I try to get myself ready for the day,
Right, Dave.
instead of flooding my mind with all these distractions that are already online. So you first have to get yourself ready for the day, and I start with sometimes um, I say it in my mind, but I say that today's going to be a good day, and instead of normally people wake up and it's like, oh, it's going to be a terrible day. Once you say that, you're already priming your
Yeah,
day
setting your
to,
whole
to be that terrible day. So if you, no matter how you feel,
series of thoughts.
no matter how you feel, you have to take the morning and set your day. So our mind is what sets the day. So you prime it in the morning, and I usually get onto some of the material that I'm writing at the time, or I look into some of the books that I'm reading. But I've been too busy with a couple of things that I'm writing now, and I take a few, at least 20 to 30 minutes on some of the stuff I'm working on writing or reading, depending on what part of the phase I'm in. Because sometimes I do a few weeks of just reading content, whether it's a book or certain blogs or certain articles. So I try get myself ready by educating myself somewhat, or training by writing as well.
Absolutely.
So I take at least a half an hour, or if I could, depending what day it is, if I could take more, I would do more. And then depending on the time of the year, I'm getting the kids. I have a family and a wife, so uh, I've been taking the kids to school lately, the last year or so. So when I get them primed for the day, and I try to keep them
Train them
somewhat
early.
positive.
Train them early.
Yeah, and I don't push it on them so much. They have their own way of life, and it's hard to push.
Yep.
It's hard to push anyone in a direction that I want to go. That's what a lot of parents have, that problem. They see something for their children where they want to take them, but you have to let them grow, let them be themselves.
Watch, listen, speak. William, thanks for joining us and giving us an insight in the book. I urge anyone who wants to pick up the book. It's you can pick it up on Amazon. And again, thanks for joining us and giving us the insights on the book. I will keep going over it and over it again. I find that I will get a couple more copies. And I'm not promoting the book. I am promoting the book, but it's one of those tools that I think it's a keeper, and I think it's a keeper from the standpoint of for self help, self improvements. We have to go back and always constantly remind ourselves of the good things as opposed to the bad things, and I think this book does it. So again, thanks for being with us and sharing the book with us.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Okay.